Welcome to Map Your Mind. Travel through the world with your brain. Far out in the heart of the Pacific Ocean, scattered like jewels across a turquoise sea, lies a nation few have heard enough about, but one that carries the weight of history and the strength of survival. This is the Marshall Islands. Not just dots on a map, but living stories, echoing with chants, resilience, and the shimmer of sunlit waves. The Marshall Islands are made up of 29 atolls and over 1,000 individual islets. If you look from above, they form delicate chains like necklaces woven by the ocean itself. The people here call it Along Keenad, our islands. And for more than 2,000 years, they have lived in harmony with the sea, mastering its moods, its treasures, and its trials. Long before modern borders, long before colonial flags were ever planted, these islands were home to expert seafarers. The Marshallese people were navigators without compasses. They could read the stars, feel the ocean swells, and use stick charts, handcrafted maps that encoded the rhythm of the waves and the placement of islands. Imagine crossing vast blue expanses with only wind, instinct, and ancestral memory guiding you. That's the genius of Pacific Island civilizations. Not primitive, brilliant. For generations, clans ruled the atolls, with chiefs heroic guiding the people through cycles of fishing, storytelling, ceremony, and cooperation. It was a society built on balance between land and ocean, human and spirit, tradition and adaptation. But like so many island nations, that balance was soon interrupted. The 16th century brought the first glimpse of European sails on the horizon. In 1529, Spanish explorer Alvaro de Saavedra became the first known European to arrive. But true colonization didn't begin until much later. In the late 1800s, Germany claimed the islands, integrating them into its Pacific Empire. They set up trading stations and tried to impose control, but the Marshallese resisted quietly, enduring, adapting. After Germany's defeat in World War I, Japan took over under a League of Nations mandate. They built military infrastructure, introduced new schools and industries, and began reshaping island life in deeper ways. But once again, the islanders endured, with language, dance, and cultural identity still held firmly in hand. Then came World War II, and with it, one of the most destructive chapters in Marshallese history. The United States stormed the Pacific, island by island, battling Japanese forces. In 1944, the Marshall Islands were captured by American troops. Atolls like Kwajalein and Majuro became key U.S. military bases. But what came next would shake the islands and the world forever. Between 1946 and 1958, the U.S. conducted 67 nuclear tests in the Marshall Islands. Let that sink in. 67. The most infamous of these was the Castle Bravo test in 1954 at Bikini Atoll, the largest nuclear explosion ever detonated by the United States. It was over 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The blast vaporized islands. Fallout rained down on nearby communities, poisoning the air, the soil, the water. Marshallese families were relocated, told it was temporary, but many would never return. Generations have suffered from radiation-related illnesses. Ancestral lands were lost. And yet, the people still sing, still resist, still tell their truth. Despite this trauma, the Marshallese people never gave up their sovereignty. They pushed for recognition, for restitution, and for control of their future. In 1979, they formed a self-governing government. By 1986, they signed the Compact of Free Association with the United States, officially becoming an independent nation, though still heavily reliant on U.S. financial aid and defense guarantees. Today, the Marshall Islands is a voice of conscience in the international community. It speaks boldly at the United Nations about nuclear justice, about climate change, about the right of small nations to be heard. Because rising seas now threaten these low-lying atolls. The average elevation of the Marshall Islands is just 2 meters above sea level. Entire villages are already experiencing flooding during high tides. Freshwater sources are being contaminated by salt. And yet, the Marshallese people are not victims, they are fighters. Activists like Kathy Jetwell-Keegener have taken the Marshallese story global. Her spoken word poetry about the nuclear legacy and climate crisis has brought audiences around the world to tears. Young Marshallese are stepping forward as artists, scientists, leaders, and bridge builders, keeping their culture alive while confronting the planet's greatest challenges. Modern Majuro, the capital, is a mix of tradition and tech, churches and coral reefs. People gather for canoe races, island feasts, and fierce volleyball matches. Laughter echoes from homes made of concrete and coconut wood. Despite limited resources, the warmth here is unmeasurable. Fun fact, Bikini Atoll, once synonymous with nuclear destruction, is actually where the swimsuit got its name. The designer claimed the fashion item would cause a shockwave just like the bomb. A chilling and strange footnote in history. But the true power of the Marshall Islands isn't in tragic metaphors. It's in the hearts of its people. People who survived colonialism, war, and radiation. People who now face rising seas with songs, science, and stories. So next time you hear Marshall Islands, don't just think of a remote place on a globe. Think of warriors who mastered the sea without maps. Of islanders who watched mushroom clouds rise and still rose with them. Of a nation that dares to dream, even as the tide creeps in. Where will your mind travel next?